It's not time that heals wounds. It's what we do with it. Some people spend a lifetime waiting for an apology that never comes. Some lose love, friendships, even peace of mind by clinging to being right. But what if I told you everything can change with a simple gesture? A letter, yes, a piece of paper written with heart in hand was enough to undo years of silence, pride, and pain. Sounds like little. Yet it was enough to rebuild a story everyone had deemed lost. And the most surprising part, the apology didn't come from who you think. This real story begins with something you may also be living. A painful distance, a void that won't go away, a conversation stuck in your throat. The person is still alive, still around, but feels so far. Then comes that silent question. Is it still worth trying? That doubt eats away, paralyzes, saddens, but no one tells you that you don't need to wait for the other to change to begin again. Reconciliation doesn't take two sides. It starts within you, with a decision, an action, a letter. In this video, you'll discover a story as moving as it is transformative. An intimate, brave account that shows how empathy, forgiveness, and the power of kindness can rewrite destinies. You'll laugh, get emotional, rethink your choices, and maybe, just maybe, feel inspired to write your own letter too. So stay with me until the end. Because this story isn't just about them, it's about me, you, all of us, who at some point let pride silence the heart. And maybe in the E. And all you need is to remember that there's still time. There was a man named Vicente who for years built walls around his soul, confusing pride with protection. With each disagreement, he added another brick, believing that respect meant domination, not understanding. As days passed, the affection that once overflowed now hid behind stubborn silences and cold stares. And still he'd say, I wasn't the one who was wrong. How often, my friend, do we let the power of kindness be smothered by the need to be right? How often does love knock and we pretend not to hear? True wisdom teaches that one's victory shouldn't mean another's defeat, that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's courage clothed in humility, that pride, when it shouts, deafens us to the whispers of gentleness. And by the time we realize that, it may already be too late. That's curious how the heart tries almost desperately to mend what pride tears apart without mercy. Maria and her sister Anna spent 5 years without speaking a single word to each other, all because of a misplaced comment at a Sunday lunch. Pride, that's all. No betrayal, no crime, just wounded pride blocking reconciliation. And the most touching part? Both dreamed of hugging again, but neither took the first step. How many of us are like that? Waiting for the other to move. First, inspiration lives in the humility of those who understand that losing control is gaining humanity. You need compassion for your own mistakes and courage to untie the knots that keep you apart. A simple message, an unexpected coffee, or even a handwritten note that can rekindle hope. And where there is hope, there's space for love to bloom again. Behind every prideful person lies a story of unhealed pain. It's easy to judge, harder to understand. And that's where empathy comes in, the art of seeing through someone else's eyes and feeling with their heart. When we teach this to children, they grow up more human, more grateful, more open to forgiveness. A father who admits a mistake in front of his child teaches more than 1,000 sermons. A leader who takes responsibility instead of pointing fingers builds trust, respect, and a space where gentleness is the norm, not the exception. The world doesn't need more people who are right. It needs more people who choose love. When pride grows quiet, wisdom can finally speak. And when it speaks, it leads us to places only understanding and affection can take us. But not everyone is ready to listen. In the small town of Monte Azul lived a couple known to all as inseparable, Clara and Joaquim. But what the neighbors didn't know was that inside their home, silence was deafening. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that carries the coldness of indifference. Joaquim, hurt by words said in a fit of anger, decided his punishment would be silence. Days, weeks passed, until Clara's smiles wilted. Silence, when used as a weapon, cuts deeper than any insult. It breaks trust, shakes love, and poisons. Affection. The power of kindness doesn't survive where dialogue is buried. When gentleness goes quiet, loneliness screams, and how it screams. In those moments, only compassion can rekindle hope. A sincere glance, a hesitant, "Good morning," a whispered request for forgiveness, even if fearful. How many parents have lost their children to silence, and how many children carry hurt not because of scolding, but because of the absence of encouraging words? Once, in a rural school, a boy named Tiago wrote in an essay, "I wish my dad would tell me he's proud of me," the teacher cried. That silence and the absence of affection is what causes the deepest emotion. Words have the power to build bridges, but the lack of them digs deep chasms. What does it cost to say, "I love you, you matter to me"? These are seeds of reconciliation, watered with kindness and blooming with empathy. When silence becomes a pattern, it turns into an emotional prison. And the way out is having the courage to speak even if your voice trembles, because sincerity heals, even if it hurts at first. And in that pain, there's always an opportunity for wisdom. It's no exaggeration to say that many relationships die not from fights, but from the corrosive silence that settles between people, silence that turns into a barrier. That prevents reconciliation, that suffocates humanity. The good news is that breaking this cycle takes less than you think. Just one initiative moved by love and humility. A voice message, a handwritten note, a simple coffee invitation. Communication, when led by understanding and empathy, opens doors that silence locked for years. The power of kindness shows up in small, almost invisible acts that transform everything. Sometimes all someone needs to hear is, "I'm here for you." And when those words appear, silence loses its grip. But do we have the courage to say what we really feel, even after so long being silent? Laura was always that friend everyone turned to in tough times. She had the gift of understanding and the patience of someone who grasps the value of empathy. The problem was, she often gave everything, time, love, listening, affection, to people who didn't even know how to say thank you. Over time, it wore down her hope. Expecting something from someone who never learned how to give back is like trying to harvest flowers in barren soil. The truth is, not everyone knows how to receive gentleness because they've never experienced it. The power of kindness demands emotional maturity, and not everyone is there yet. That's why wisdom is needed to know the line between giving out of love and erasing oneself out of need. Laura only realized it when she cried alone on her birthday, without a single call from those she fought hardest for. This story, although specific, is a portrait of many unbalanced relationships. Parents who give themselves unconditionally to children who have not yet learned the value of gratitude. Partners who invest everything emotionally in someone who is still trapped in their own ego. Friends who have worn themselves out trying to save someone who does not want to be saved. At some point, compassion needs to be accompanied by the courage to protect oneself. This is not selfishness, it is self-love. It is necessary to understand that some people can only give what they have, and sometimes they have nothing but emptiness. Inspiration lies in considering that our energy needs to be cared for as a sacred treasure. It is possible to love and still maintain safe boundaries. True humanity lies in the sincerity with which we say, "I love you, but I cannot continue to lose myself to keep you." One of life's greatest lessons is learning to adjust expectations. Giving your all to someone who lacks emotional structure to give back is like building a house on sand. That doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world. It means cultivating the wisdom to know where to invest your affection. Ask yourself, does this relationship inspire me or drain me? It's at that point that humility meets discernment. Reconciliation with your own story begins when you stop demanding from others what they don't know how to offer. Instead, you can redirect that love toward projects, causes, people, and places where it can truly blossom. Visiting a retirement home, sponsoring a child, writing encouragement letters to strangers, all of that is reconnection. All of that is active hope. Because sometimes, when you stop expecting, is when you finally start receiving. Marta carried for years the weight of a betrayal that was never acknowledged. The cruelest part wasn't the pain of abandonment, but the silence of someone who left without even looking back. Still, she chose to move on. More than that, she chose to forgive. Not because she heard a "I'm sorry," but because she understood that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other to die. Forgiveness, in this case, was an act of self-love, of deep wisdom. It demands understanding, of the wounded soul and the humility to accept that not everyone will have the greatness to admit their faults. Forgiving without an apology is like lighting a candle in the dark. It may seem small, but it shines just enough to help you move forward. And that liberating choice is born from gentleness with one's own story. Many confuse forgiveness with permissiveness. But the truth is, forgiving without hearing an apology may be one of the greatest acts of courage and humanity. It's not about forgetting what happened, but about looking at yourself with empathy and deciding your peace is worth more than wounded pride. Some people wait decades for a sign of remorse that never comes, and in the meantime, they lose the chance to live lightly with true love. You must trust that life will take care of what you can't control. Instead of waiting, how about transforming? Write a letter never sent. Talk to God before sleeping. Repeat like a mantra, "I release this for me." Because forgiveness, in the end, is a gift we give ourselves. A gift that makes room for affection to bloom again. I met a man named Jonas. He forgave the brother who had stolen from him, even without ever hearing a confession. When I asked how he managed it, he replied, "I realized he didn't have what I had. Peace." That struck me deeply. Forgiving without a request is a leap of faith, an inspiration that comes from within and is sustained by the power of kindness. It's like taking a step toward freedom, even if the other never moves. And this teaches us something profound. Reconciliation doesn't have to be mutual to be real. Sometimes it just needs to happen within us. It's in that quiet choice that the purest form of compassion lives. And when we forgive without demand, we access a rare strength, a trust that moves mountains. But not everyone is ready for that leap, especially when the past keeps knocking. There are absences that have nothing to do with distance. It's possible to be side by side and still feel a chasm between two souls. That's what happened with Felipe and Helena. After years together, he was still there, under a roof, sharing the same habits, even the same couch. But his presence was just an echo. She missed a sincere hug, a "how was your day," spoken with genuine love. And the worst part? There was no fight, no goodbye, just a silent and painful drift, a kind of solitude that eats from within. In these cases, understanding is a compass, realizing that emotional absence hurts more than physical silence. And when gentleness is lost, it makes room for that subtle, cruel emptiness. Hope in those moments feels like a flickering candle at the end of a tunnel with no end. Living beside someone absent requires a deep dose of empathy and a courage that borders on desperation. Because you have to endure days of talking alone, laughing with no response, loving with no return. It's a constant challenge to self-esteem, to humanity, and to inspiration. Many keep insisting, believing things will get better, and sometimes they do. But other times, wisdom is needed to understand that some presences are in truth masked absences. When affection is missing, the body may still be there, but the soul has already packed its bags. Some live this way for years out of fear of loneliness, guilt, or the belief that to love is to endure everything. But true love is a mutual choice, and when one no longer chooses, reconciliation is needed, with reality and, above all, with oneself. Leticia once told me something I've never forgotten. I wish he had just left for good. And I understood. The emptiness of someone who stays but doesn't give themselves is an invisible wound. It's like living in a space with no color, no music, no touch, where affection becomes a memory rather than a practice. In those moments, gratitude for what once was mixes with the pain of what was lost, and forgiveness becomes a vital tool, not just for the other, but for herself, for having slowly allowed her own light to dim. True healing begins with the gentleness to look in the mirror and say, "You deserve more. You deserve trust, presence, connection." The power of kindness in this case reveals itself in walking away without hatred, in making space for new stories, in nurturing hope. Because sometimes being alone is healthier than staying with someone who's already left on the inside. Carlos was a man of few words but with a huge heart. He loved his wife, his children, his friends. But when life brought him losses, his father's death, a business failure, a friend's betrayal, he went quiet. And it wasn't just any silence. It was the kind that carries a muffled scream. The pain piled up, took shape, and started occupying the spaces once filled with affection. His wife asked, "Are you okay?" And he would reply with a nod, a half smile. But inside there was chaos. Popular wisdom says, silence gives consent, but sometimes silence is just a plea for understanding. When pain turns to silence, it becomes a kind of internal exile. And if there's no empathy, the silence grows, spread until it becomes distance. This is where many relationships are lost, without anyone shouting, without a single argument, just the silent pain building invisible walls. The power of kindness in these moments reveals itself in small gestures. Breakfast in bed, a kind, active listening without judgment. When compassion guides our actions, silence begins to fade like fog in the sun. It takes courage to break that cycle, both for the one in pain and the one beside them. Because sometimes distance isn't physical, it's emotional. And if it isn't handled with love and gentleness, it can become an abyss too wide to cross. Reconciliation starts with the humility to ask, but also with the humanity to hear what the other is afraid to say. And believe me, that can change everything. I remember Sophia, a young woman who once came to me. She said her boyfriend was there, but he wasn't really there anymore. When she cried, he just looked at her. When she spoke, he only heard the sound, not the meaning. And over time, the silence between them became so loud, it hurt to the bone. "I miss even our fights," she confessed. That struck me deeply. It shows just how much emotional absence hurts. The void that arises from lack of connection is treacherous. And that's where hope comes in. That spark that still survives. Even in the dark, when one chooses to act with inspiration, with sincerity, even in the face of another's silence, something begins to change. Dialogue can be reopened. Love can carefully be restored. But it all begins with a gesture and with a choice. Pride, that old saboteur disguised as strength, has ruined more love stories than the absence of love itself. In a small mountain town, I met a couple, Tadu and Marlene, who loved each other deeply, yet lived like strangers. Each waited for the other to give in. They never apologized, never took the first step, and so between proud silences and heavy looks, they drifted apart. The affection still existed, but trapped in a cage of vanity. Pride is deaf. It doesn't hear the other. It's mute. It doesn't speak when it's most needed. And it's blind. It can't see the pain it causes. To truly love, you must make room for understanding, for forgiveness, for empathy, and above all, for the humility to say, "I was wrong." Because in that recognition lies the true greatness of humanity. How many friendships have been lost simply because no one wanted to give in? How many families have broken apart over a silly fight, fueled by wounded ego? Wisdom teaches us that peace is worth more than pride. But the modern world, so focused on being right, often forgets the power of kindness. It's a quiet power, almost invisible, yet capable of healing decades of distance. Speaking from the heart is not weakness, it's courage. It's having enough inspiration to choose a bridge instead of a wall. Admitting we need one another is an act of love and compassion, because in the end that's what makes us human, the ability to love despite our flaws. And those who truly love don't hide behind pride, they show themselves in spite of it. I know a father who hadn't spoken to his son for 15 years. It all began with a petty argument about life choices, wounded pride on both sides. Time passed, pain became silence, and silence became distance. But love was still there, suffocated, waiting for a gesture. One day the father wrote a letter. It didn't say, "I'm right" or "you were wrong." It simply said, "I miss you." That phrase, full of sincerity, was the beginning of reconciliation. Sometimes all someone needs to lower their guard is to know they are still loved. Pride makes us prisoners of ourselves, but love, when true, can melt even the thickest ice. So have the courage to listen, to speak, to love, because in the end, what remains isn't who won the argument, but who chose not to lose the person. They say time heals all, but the truth is, it also charges dearly for what we left undone. Regret is that subtle pain that settles in when we realize time doesn't go back, and some people won't be there anymore to hear what we wish we'd said. Donna Nosa, an 82-year-old woman, carried a sad glow in her eyes when speaking about her sister. "She left before I told her how much I loved her." 12 years without contact over a silly argument. Regret in this case was a weight. Even hope couldn't fully dissolve. That's why wisdom invites us to act before pride shuts the door on love. Reconciliation doesn't need the perfect moment, just truth. And when gentleness leads our actions, emptiness gives way to fullness again. But we must act while there's still time. Most people don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do. The kiss they didn't give, the hug they denied, the message left in drafts. And that's where compassion lives, looking back with sincerity, but also with the humility to accept that we can't change the past, only the now. Inspiration lies in turning regret into action, apologizing even if it's late, loving more intentionally, practicing gratitude as a way of life. It's in the present moment that affection gains power and the power of kindness shows itself. Some say time is a thief. I prefer to think it's a strict teacher, one who teaches through loss, absence, and silence. But it's up to us to learn before the lesson comes too late. Gabriel, a young man I met during a lecture, once told me something I've never forgotten. Crying, he said, "My father died before I could tell him I forgave him." And that unspoken "I forgive you" became a burden. Forgiveness is a door that closes from the inside. It doesn't depend on the other. Understanding this principle can free hearts stuck in old resentments. Don't wait for special dates. Don't wait for the other to change. Say it today. Do it today. Love today. Life is this fragile and beautiful adventure, where every moment is a chance to do things differently. Don't let pride write the end of your story. Nurture love with courage, with presence, with daily affection, because when regret comes too late, all that's left is silence. And silence, as we know, can hurt more than 1,000 words left unsaid. Sometimes all a relationship needed was a gesture, a flower left on the table, a sincere "I'm sorry," a silent hug at the right moment. But pride, haste, and fear often choke those small, grand actions. Fernando and Julia ended things. After years together, not due to lack of love, but lack of initiative. He didn't understand she just wanted to be heard. She didn't realize he just needed a little hope. And so, they got lost among unspoken words and heavy silences. After the end, Fernando said, "If I had written that letter, as maybe everything would be different." The simple gesture that never happened became a great pain. Wisdom lives in the now, in not waiting for the perfect moment. Life is made of tiny opportunities that, if seized with gentleness, can save everything. It's curious how we underestimate the impact of a message sent at the right time, a spontaneous compliment, a look that says, "I'm here." The modern world distracts us with empty urgencies, while the hearts we love wait for sincere gestures. And it doesn't have to be grand, just intentional. A call to your grandmother, a note left on the mirror, a coffee lovingly made for someone you love. These are acts that carry the true power of kindness. When guided by compassion, they become bridges. Reconciliation, living love. Those who understand this begin to act differently. They see every opportunity as a chance to truly connect, and that's where inspiration arises, when we realize that one small gesture at the right time can change destinies. But the question is, will you wait To lose or act now. I remember a story I heard at a train station. A man was crying, staring at a boarding pass. He said his daughter had left for another country after years of silence between them. All she wanted was for me to say, "I care." And I never did. That simple gesture, that short phrase, could have prevented years of pain. Our humanity shows in moments like that, when we realize too late that it didn't take much effort, just presence, just listening, just love. That's why understanding must be urgent. Affection can't be postponed. Sincerity must be cultivated daily. And gratitude should be spoken aloud while there's still someone to hear it. Because in the end, what could have prevented everything wasn't some radical change. It was just a simple gesture, one that failed to happen. But the next one still can. Being right might win the argument, but reconciliation wins over time. Benedita and Almir, married for 47 years, had decades of ups and downs, like any real couple. But there was a time they went months without speaking, each swearing they were right. Until one day, tired of the silence, Benedita sat beside her husband and said, "It doesn't matter who was right anymore. What matters is what we're losing." From that moment, something magical happened, healing. When affection speaks louder than ego, what was hard softens, and wounds become scars. And scars no longer hurt, they teach. Wisdom lies in understanding that life doesn't ask for perfection, just presence. And when gentleness becomes a habit, it prepares the ground for love to bloom again, even where everything seemed dry. Reconciling is an act of courage. It requires humility to admit mistakes, understanding to listen with an open heart, and empathy to see beyond the hurt. When two brothers who hadn't spoken in 15 years hugged at their mother's funeral, they said nothing, but said everything. The power of that moment wasn't in the words, it was in the surrender, in the decision to break the cycle of pain. Forgiveness, when it's given freely, transforms. It renews hope, restores humanity, rekindles frozen bonds. Reason isolates us, but love reconnects us. And the beauty of reconciliation is that it doesn't erase the past. It redefines it. It's like cleaning a dusty window. The view is the same, but now it's clear. And when we can see clearly, the heart can finally rest. Taking the first step isn't easy, but someone has to do it. And it's almost always the one who has matured the most emotionally. Reconciling is not surrendering to the other. It's freeing yourself. Freeing yourself from the need to always be right, from the arrogance disguised as self-defense. It's accepting that every human being makes mistakes and that everyone deserves a second chance. When we choose the path of forgiveness, empathy, and the power of kindness, we find a peace no argument could bring. And then, relationships gain new colors. Sincerity returns to the conversations. Affection becomes natural. Gratitude replaces resentment. And inspiration is born from the simple truth that loving, despite everything, is still possible. Because in the end, what truly heals isn't winning. It's looking someone in the eyes and saying, "I'm here, I still choose you." And now tell me honestly, how many stories in your life are still waiting for an unwritten letter? How many silences have you upheld, thinking it was strength, when deep down it was just fear? Maybe today is the day to take the first step. It doesn't have to be grand. It could be a simple message, a "I miss you," an unexpected hug. Because life doesn't wait, and time doesn't warn when it will stop giving chances. Reconciliation heals more than being right. And the courage to love ain't even after pain, but is a gift that few possess but all can cultivate. What will you do with everything you felt here? Will you just close this video and go back to your routine? Or will you turn that emotion into action? Who came to mind while you listened to these words? Who deserves to hear what you've been holding back for so long? Who needs to feel your affection, your presence, your kindness? We never know the magnitude of change a simple gesture can make. But I guarantee one thing, those who choose love never lose. It might hurt, but it's not an empty pain. It's one that teaches, heals, and humanizes, and in the end it saves. If this story touched your heart, as I hope it did, leave a comment. What letter do you need to write? What reconciliation do you long to experience? Let's talk about it. And if you believe more people need to hear these truths, share this video. Oh, and of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we don't just talk about stories, we talk about transformation, about empathy, about real love. And I'll be here with you to continue this journey, one step at a time, one forgiveness at a time, one fresh start at a time.